And now the last part, which I'm going to talk about today, is the critical evaluation of the Constituent Assembly. Okay, so a lot of things will be covered as you asked, as the question asked by the Purav right now. Uh, 30-40% things will be covered of the previous as well as the critiques. Okay, so we'll begin the critical evaluation of the Constituent Assembly. Basically, the Indian Constitution, which came into effect on 26th January 1950, has the dubious distinct of being the longest in the world. As I told you that day, it is one of the longest constitution of the world, the largest and the lengthiest. But the length and the complexity are perhaps understandable when one considers the country's size and diversity. Why our constitution is one of the longest and the lengthiest constitution? Why? If you understand the size of the country and its diversity, so then you can understand this is the reason behind the lengthiest and the longest, because we kept our constitution makers kept the scope for all sections of the society and all the tribes, different races. So during independence, India was not merely large and diverse, but was also deeply divided on the line of the religion. You will find Sikhism, Jainism, Buddhism, and so many factions there in the society. A constitution design. Why? Why do we need constitution, and why it has design? A constitution designed to keep the country together, so a country will be united and take it forward, so we can move forward, develop the nation and the people, and had necessarily to be an elaborate, carefully worked out, and painstakingly drafted document. It takes a lot of time. For one thing, it sought to be healed wounds of the past and the present, because we, the people of India, have passed through a humiliating life before drafting the constitutions, were colonized and enslaved by the Britishers. We do not have the dignity at that point of the time. We do not have the free to speech. We do not have the right to elect our government. We do not lead the life according to our own wishes. And to make Indians of different class, caste, and community come together in a shared political experiment. On 15th August 1947, India had been made free. India got independence on this date, but it had also been divided on the same date. The India was divided into two parts, that is the India and the Pakistan. Through the late 1940s, the two leading Indian political parties, that is the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, had repeatedly failed to arrive at a settlement that would bring about religious reconciliation and social harmony. Both of these major political parties unable to arrive at a settlement or at a particular juncture where they can reconcile their differences, and mostly the differences were on the grounds of the religion, and which was impacting the social harmony. And you must aware about the direct action day and the great Calcutta killings of August 1946. began a year of almost continuous writing across the northern and the eastern India. And at that point of the time, to establish the peace and to stop this violence, Mahatma Gandhi went to Noakhali in the Bengal to stop the violence. This violence culminated in the massacres that accompanied the transfer of the population when the partition of India was announced. So, because of this violence, a certain kind of the fear has set up in the mind of the people of both the communities. So they thought if they will stay there, they will be in the minority and they must be killed. And in other parts, which became the Pakistan, so their minority was the Hindus who thought if I will stay there. So both the side, only because of this violence culminated in the massacre, which accompanied the transfer of population. Only because of that, having the transfer of the population from here to there. And even in the process of the transfer of the population, masses have been killed. The one community killed the another community. The Indian Independence Act passed by the British Parliament when? Do you have any idea? Yes. Any one of you want to tell me? The Indian Independence Act.
18 July 1947.
Okay. Uh, and it was passed by the British Parliament Act. And by this act, the British India was divided into two new independent states, that is India and Pakistan, which were to be the dominance under the Commonwealth of Nation. And till the moment the new constitution will be drafted and enacted, they will continue as the dominant under the Commonwealth of the nation. The Constituent Assembly was divided into two for the separate states, with each new assembly having sovereign powers transferred it to the respective dominant. So, for both the dominant, dominant of India and the dominant of Pakistan, have separate Constituent Assembly, which made up for making the constitution of the particular land, that is the India and the Pakistan, and the sovereign powers have been transferred. Then comes another problem which faced by the new nation, which faced by every new nation was, and in even India faced, the integration. So the problem faced by the new nation India was that of the princely estate, and you know there was a number of the princely estates, and during the period of the British Raj or the British rule, approximately one third of the total area of the subcontinent was under the control of the Nawab and Maharaja, who owed allegiance to the British crown. So, whatever was the area at that point of the time, one third area was ruled by the Nawab, different Nawabs, Maharaja, Gharanaj, and they were allegiance to the British crown. They obey to the British crown, but was otherwise left mostly free to rule or misrule. So when this act has come, the Indian Independence Act, from that onwards, the princely estates were free to join India, Pakistan, either India or the Pakistan, or to be independent. And the act also terminated British domination over the princely estate. The act, which passed on 18th July 1947, by this act, yes, Purab, you have written. I cannot hear you properly. Yes, Purab, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and what about others? Rahatul, am I audible?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay, and what about others?
So you're audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay,
Sir, yes, sir. Audible, sir.
okay. So, when this act was passed on 18 July 1947, with the effect of this act, the princely estates having having the option either to join India, the dominant of India, or Pakistan, or to be independent. And this act terminated the British domination over the princely estate, each of which was left to decide whether to accede to one or the other. As I told you, either the new dominant of India or the Pakistan, or to continue as independent state in their own right. In most cases, you will find the states were dependent on the central institutions. And if you have seen the videos, you must have find the merger of the estates, the princely estates into the India, and only the problem came with the three princely estates: Hyderabad, Junagadh, and Jammu and Kashmir. The constituent is but Sardar Patel was looking that matter, the integration of the princely estates and the unity of India, and he done the task except the Jammu and Kashmir, which was looked by the then Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and the case was different there. The Constituent Assembly tried to find a space within these limitations. With all these limitations, tried to find a space for what? To draft a constitution, keeping in the mind that unity in diversity, having a lot of challenges in front of the Constituent Assembly at that point of the time. You do not think by all those things in and around. You just go into the context of that 1947 and the challenges, just newly birthed India or a nation. And by keeping in the mind unity in diversity, the diversity of India, and to maintain the unity, keeping this main central theme in the mind would have to be ensured. Still, critics says the critic says what? The Constitution of India is a reflection of sheer compromise, not only with the indigenous forces like the princely estates or the different communities, but also with the British colonial rule. So the critics say what? The Constitution of India is a reflecting what? It's a kind of the compromise, not only with the indigenous forces inside the nation, even the princely estates, certain privileges given to the Jammu and Kashmir and some of the states at that point of the time. The reference is here, but the issue with the Jammu and Kashmir has sorted out now with the abrogation of the Article 370, and some of the special powers have been granted to the northeastern states by the Article 371, and its different subsections of the Article 371. We'll talk about that when I will explain in the upcoming units the fifth and the sixth schedule and the federalism, or the different communities, and also with the British colonial rule. You will find a major impact of the Government of India Act 1935 on the newly made constitution. Although the effect of the cabinet mission was already hanging in the balance due to changing attitude towards it in the Indian National Congress, the Muslim League, and the Chamber of Prince. So I discussed in the previous lecture the cabinet mission and the proposal, and the how the reconciliation was tried and failed, and in all between the delaying in joining the Constituent Assembly, initially agreed to join the Muslim League, then refused, then boycotted, then demanded separate constituent assembly, all those things. It was hanging in between. And another problem with the chambers of the prince, where the representative of the princely estates were there. So the objective resolution was still moved within the parameter of the cabinet mission plan. The first, the objective resolution was moved, and only in the domain or the spectrum of the cabinet mission plan. And why? Hoping that the Muslim League members then boycotting the meeting would perhaps finally join. What is the bigger plan? And it happened. As it happened, this turned out to be a polite hope. This has written by the Professor MP Singh and Rekha Saxena in his book. Both of them are Professor MP Singh has retired, and Rekha Saxena is the professor in the Department of Political Science, Delhi University. And Professor MP Singh is one of the renowned experts on the federalism and this political institutions. Another critiques argue what the Indian Constituent Assembly was not a sovereign body. So you must note it down some of the important points in your notebooks. So you must sit with the notebooks and you must note it down as a pointer, the critics. So later on you can revise when you are reading a book, because I try to sum up the Granville Austin and the book by Professor M.P. Singh and Rekha Saxena, and as well as the book The Indian Constitution by D.D. Basu. So, and the another book, The Working of a Democratic Constitution of India, by the Granville Austin. The book of the Granville Austin is one of the best ever written book on the Indian Constitution all across the world. So the another critique says what? The Indian Constituent Assembly was not a sovereign body. Why not sovereign body? Because it's why not sovereign body? Created by the people of India after attaining independence from British imperial rule, as was the case in America. So it was created by the people of India after attaining independence from the British imperial rule. It happened? No. So it was the executive decision of the British rulers taken before independence. So the Constituent Assembly this idea and this decision has come from the British Parliament. An act has been passed by the British Parliament regarding this. So it was the executive decision of the British rulers taken before the India's independence. So that's why the critics say it's not a sovereign body. The members of the Constituent Assembly were not directly elected. It was in an extra constitutional arrangement to draft a constitution. It was an extra constitutional arrangement to draft a constitution which had to receive its approval from the British Parliament. Subsequently, similarly happened in the case of the South Africa. As I told you, on July 18th, 1947, an act has been passed by the British Parliament to form the Constituent Assembly. Still before India's independence, the British Parliament enacted the Indian Independence Act and gave constitutional sanction to the Indian Constitution, which is contrary to the claim of the sovereign entity of India. So as a result, what happened? So as a result, it's not sure, perhaps, sayad, India had to accept the membership of the Commonwealth. Maybe because of that, perhaps the India had to accept the membership of the Commonwealth, like the other dominants, and had to acknowledge Britain as the head of the Commonwealth. And you will find in the Commonwealth, all the nations were the colony of the British. Then move on to the next content point. The constitution drafted by the assembly has been viewed by the critics as a patchwork. You know what is a patchwork? Just copying it from somewhere and paste it is the patchwork, as it derived many things from the Western world. And why the critics say it's a patchwork? Patchwork, why? Because it took the certain things from the Western world, from the leading constitutions of the world at that point of the time. United Kingdom's parliamentary setup, we took the parliamentary setup in India from the United Kingdom. Why? Because we were familiar with that, and this similar setup was there in India. We took the federal form of the government from the United States of America. Not totally, but in combination with the constitutional experiment of Canada, 1867, or Australia, 1901, may be looked upon as an attempt to reconcile seemingly contradictory principles of government. India has tried out both the policies of the fusion of power and the separation of power, which is still in a confusing state. So in India, you will find the fusion of the power. The power is coming out from where? From the center. And on the another hand, you will also find it talks about, and the fusion of power, you will find the power is assimilating at one place, that is the center, and you will find the separation of the power, legislative, executive, and the judiciary. It is still a confusing state. It's the remarks of the critics. Coexistence of the federal principle of supremacy of the constitution and the norm of parliamentary sovereignty in a parliamentary form of government had been a source of dispute since 1967, and often sanctity of the constitution fell under crisis. So interstate dispute over the river water sharing, and recently over the tax and all those things that will be discussed in the center-state relation. Its colonial legacy has been criticized by the various experts. One of the major constitutional experts, D.D. Basu, and his book, The Indian Constitution, has termed it is an excellent patchwork. D.D. Basu says it's one of the excellent patchwork. Perhaps during the period of turmoil, this was the best thing the framers of the Constitution could do. So, to prevent, safeguard the government or the nation at the time of the turmoil, mishappenings, this was the best which the Constitution makers can do. They did it. The Constitution of India asserted in its preamble. When you will read the preamble, so then you will find that the opening line, that people of India resolve in the Constituent Assembly to constitute India into a sovereign democratic republic. We, the people of India. So here it is asserting in the preamble, the people of India resolve in the Constituent Assembly. For what? To constitute India into a sovereign democratic republic. It will be discussed more in upcoming topics. In a democracy, its citizens enjoy not only the right of running the government of the country, but also the privileges of framing its constitution. The Constituent Assembly means a constitution-making body, which I told you earlier, that is an assembly of the people. Constituent Assembly is an assembly of the people, or a convention set up by the people of a country for the purpose of framing its constitution. uh, choosing between devolution and federalism, either to devolve the power or and the federalism, all the ethnic identity and the multiple identities based federalism is the fundamental contractual right between the people and the state. How uh, how people will choose between the devolution and the federalism or the ethnic identity. We'll discuss it in much more details when we'll talk about the fifth and sixth schedule of the Indian Constitution. You must have remembered the roles, the concept of original position, which I taught you in the political theory in the first semester. In Rawls' terms of original position, it is the choice that had to be rationally decided by the representatives of the people. It is the choice in which rationally decided by the representatives of the people whomsoever were present in the Constituent Assembly, who were representing the people and the different sections of the society and the community and the ethnic tribe, or in a higher practical democratic sense, by the people themselves through the referendum. The denial of the choice of the people over the structure of a state is one of the examples of the democratic deficit. All critics say there is the democratic deficit in the Indian constitution. How? Because the people were denied of the choices, the denial of the choices of the people over the structure of a state, particular structure of the state were set up and done the task. Another critics uh, says Constituent Assembly was not elected on the basis of universal adult franchise. As you know, today in India, election happen on the basis of universal adult franchise. What is this? Earlier, the age was 21 years when the India got independence. Whomsoever will attain the age of 21 years will be eligible to vote, which amended later on, and then the eligibility criteria become 18 years. Whomsoever will attain the age of 18 years will be eligible to vote. So how many of you have voted? Yes? Anyone of you have voted? Tell me. Priscilla? Yes, Rahatul?
No, sir.
Okay. Prince is not. Praveen?
So I'm here. I'm here. I haven't voted.
Okay, okay. Praveen? Praveen?
Yes or
You
no?
people.
I haven't
Okay,
get my other
okay, okay. What
ticket on.
about Lodino? So the critics points out that the assembly was not elected on the basis of universal adult franchise. The critics is saying what? The member of the Constituent Assembly was not elected on the basis of universal adult franchise because a lot of members were indirectly elected, nominated members from the different communities and the sections of the society to represent them. Only prominent groups of minorities were given special representations as minorities. I have shown you the chart in the previous lecture. 88 members from the minority communities were in the Constituent Assembly, and even I to brief to you about the number of the member from the each community. How many members were there? The Constituent Assembly was a one-party body in a one-party country, as identified by the critics. Even the critics say It is a one party Constituent Assembly was a one party body, that is the Congress. So critics says the Constituent Assembly was the Congress, Congress was the Constituent Assembly. The Congress party had wide diversity within itself, and how it was a Congress system. Even inside the Congress, you will find the conservative industrialist to radical Marxist, but the party members played dominant role. At that point of the time, you will find even the communist ideologue people were inside the Congress. The rightist Hindutva groups were inside the Congress, and many more, all socialist, liberalist, industrialist, capitalist, each and every orientation of the people were present inside the Congress. So that's why the Congress, later on, the Rajni Kothari in his writings used the term the Congress system. Congress was an umbrella organization. Electoral process, just a second. So, can you tell me the last point I was talking what?
Sir, electoral processes.
Okay. Before that, I talked what? Okay, umbrella organization, electoral process. This electoral process was not conducive for the formation of a true representative body. Why? It was based on the restricted domain drawn by the sixth schedule of 1935 Act. And from similarly this sixth schedule of the 1935 Act, you will find the sixth schedule in the Indian Constitution present time, which empowers the scheduled area and the scheduled tribe, fifth and the sixth schedule area and the tribal area, which excluded masses. At that point of the time, you will find the sixth schedule of the 1935 Act, which is restricting how, at that point of the time, the sixth schedule was dealing with the electoral process, which is different from the today's fifth and the sixth schedule, which excluded the masses of the peasants, the majority of the small shopkeepers, traders, and the countless others from the rolls through tax, property, and educational qualification. So at that point of the time in the British India, in the electoral process, only those will be included whomsoever were paying the tax and having the property and the prescribed educational qualification. These were the criteria. Just mere attaining the age on the basis of universal adult franchise, the people cannot vote. Everyone do not have the right to vote. Only whomsoever were in the rolls through the tax were paying the tax and holding the property, particular amount of the property, and having the educational qualification could vote. This has written by the Granville Austin in his book. If you will read the page number 10 of his book, and according to him, if the electoral process had happened at that point of the time, then only around 30% of the people could able to vote. Around 13, it's exactly 28.5. 20, it's yeah, exactly 28.5% of the people was eligible to vote at that point of the time. Then again, the problem was there. The representation from all the sections was not possible. Even the critics mention very few members of the assembly played particularly important role. Not all the members played the important role, very few members. And the three were the representatives of the Congress, namely the Jawaharlal Nehru, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad. So it was the Pandit Nehru who moved the objective resolution. Many a times question comes in MCQ. This is most important point. questions which comes in the PCS and the civil services as well. Who moved this objective resolution? Uh, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru moved this along with the resolution proposing that the national flag of India be a horizontal tricolor of saffron, white, and the dark green in equal proportion with a wheel in a navy blue. So you must have seen the tricolor of India, our national flag, is in the horizontal shape and having the three color saffron white and the dark green in the equal proportion. All the three areas are divided equally, and you will find a wheel in a navy blue color at the center of the flag. Then Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, on the other hand, the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel worked mostly behind the scenes. He has not come in front, but he was working behind the curtains, playing a key role in drafting the several reports and working to reconcile opposing points of view. If having the dispute in the Constituent Assembly and not having the consensus over this certain matter, so then he used to mediate and reconcile the conflicting interest in the Constituent Assembly. The role of the Dr. Rajendra Prasad was questionable as the president of the Constituent Assembly because he had to steer the discussion along constructive lines. So it was the duty of the Dr. Rajendra Prasad to keep the discussion of the Constituent Assembly in the line, not to divert. Why? To steer the discussion so the discussion can happen uh, in a proper channel while making sure all the members had a chance to speak. And it was the duty of the Dr. Rajendra Prasad to provide the equal opportunity to all the members to speak on a certain matter or a subject of the consideration or the discussion. The member of the interim government were actually the member of the Viceroy Executive Council. I already explained this in the history of the Constituent Assembly. The Viceroy constituted to be the head of the council, Executive Council. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was designated as the Vice Chancellor of the Council or the de facto Prime Minister. De facto refers to the original power who is exercising the real power in reality. Beside this Congress trio, as I told you, a very important member of the Constituent Assembly was the an economist and lawyer, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. During the period of the British rule, Dr. Ambedkar had been a political opponent of the Congress. He was opponent to the Congress and against the Congress, but he served as the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution. And as Mahatma Gandhi advised the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru to give the task to draft the Constitution to the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, as he is the most resourceful and the suitable person for that task, despite of having an opposition. So the best knowledge of the best available knowledge and the resources were used by the assembly and the India to form its constitution. Serving with him were the two other lawyers, K.M. Munshi from Gujarat and Alladi Krishnami Swami Iyer from Madras, both of whom gave crucial inputs in the drafting of the constitution. And the six members were given assistance to the two civil servants. One was B.N. Rao, who was the constitutional advisor to the government of India, who prepared a series of background papers based on a close study of the political system of the different countries. And the other was the chief Dragut S.N. Mukherjee, who had the liability to put the complex proposal in clear and legal language. A good number of the members had a legal background. You will find in the Constituent Assembly a lot of members were from the legal background. Hence, they were aware of the functioning of the constitutions of the various countries of the world, and this helped in drafting the constitution. Naturally, they were tempted to borrow different institutions and the constitutional practices from the various sources. When you will be aware about the different constitutional values and their constitutions of the other countries, then then whatever is the good there have been borrowed by them here. At the same point of the time, they were conscious of the suitability of those institutions in Indian state. So they were very much careful whether the things which we are borrowing from another country to here, whether that institution will be able to perform in the Indian atmosphere. As a result, a lot of debate and discussions happened in the Constituent Assembly while incorporating the things which borrowed from the different constitutions of the world. Sir Benegal Narsingh Rao was an Indian civil servant, ICS, and a diplomat and a statesman, and known for his major role in the drafting of the Constitution of India. And he was a constitutional advisor as well. The idea of the Constituent Assembly was implicit in the demand for Swaraj. So the idea of the Constituent Assembly was already present in the demand for Swaraj, which made by the Indian National Congress as early as in 1906. And in 1936, after 30 years, the Congress resolved that the Congress stands for a genuine democratic state in India. So it got cleared in 1936. In India, when the India will get independence, India will be a democratic state where the power has been transferred to the people as a whole and the government is under the effective control. A state can come only once into existence through a constituent assembly, having the power to determine the constitution of the country. As you know, on 15th March 1946, Mr. Clement Attlee, who hails from the Labour Party, was the Prime Minister of the Britain, had categorically admitted the right of Indians to frame their own constitutions, Indians having the right to frame their own constitution. So, in that way, the British Parliament passed the Indian Independence Act 1947 in July of the same year, 18th July, as I told you some time back. As per the Independence Act, the two independent dominions were created on the 15th August 1947, that is the Dominion of India and the Dominion of the Pakistan. The Constituent Assembly, which was already been formed, went into action as per the Cabinet Mission Plan. The total membership for the whole of India was 389, out of which 93 were from the princely estates and 296 were elected from the British Indian provinces. Yes, Rahatul.
Yes, sir.
Do you have another lecture after 11:30 or not?
Let me 1 minute, sir.
In that case, I will stop here, or otherwise we'll
Sir, we don't
end.
have class with you today.
Okay. No, I'm asking, do you have any other class after 11:30?
Yes, sir. We have
Yes, sir.
public administration.
Okay.
At 1:20.
Okay. Then we'll try to sum up in next 7 minutes. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Then comes the Constituent Assembly when it met for the first time on 9th December 1946 was not a sovereign body. It had to follow the prescribed procedure which set up by the Cabinet Mission of the British Parliament. Already I discussed all these things in the previous lecture. On 11th December 1946, the Indian National Congress elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad just after 2 days as the permanent chairman of the Constituent Assembly. And before the Constituent Assembly transformed into a fully sovereign body on 15th August 1947, the Constituent Assembly had set up a various committees. इसके पहले की 15 1947 को when India will get independence, before that they have done some of the tasks, and the Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the chairman of the Constituent Assembly, and they created the various committees who will look into the different parts of the Constitution, and they decided it. And already I briefed you about the these committees, like the Union Powers Committee on Minorities and the Fundamental Rights, Committee on the Financial Relation, Committee on the Chief Commissioner of the Provinces, and the Advisory Committee on the Tribal Area, all those things. The report of these committees were considered, and the drafting committee with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and the then Law Minister of the India as the chairman was appointed on 29th August 1947. Dr. Ambedkar was the Law Minister as well, and he was the head of the drafting committee, and to give a legal form to the decisions embodied in the reports. The draft constitution was submitted to the Constituent Assembly. The first draft of the constitution was submitted to the Constituent Assembly on 4th November 1948. The new constitution was inaugurated and adopted by the Indian Parliament on which day, do you know? The Constitution of India was adopted on which date? Yes, do you have any idea?
Sir,
Mr.
26
Angi?
January
26 January 1950.
Yes, all right.
1950, 26.
Yes.
But it was completed on 26th November 1949.
No, I'm asking
On that day,
when
on
adopted.
that day, it's just enacted. On 26 November 1949, the Constitution just enacted, not
Yes,
adopted.
yes, and it was adopted on 26th January 1950, and thus we are celebrating the Republic Day in India.
Republic Day on that day, yes.
I need another 10 minutes minimum. So tell me what to do. Shall I stop here or shall I complete this topic and we'll start the new topic tomorrow? Tell me fast.
Sir, you can complete the topic.
It's better that I will complete it, because in that case I will start new topic tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Meanwhile, any one of you can drop the text to your next subject teacher who will join 5 minutes late. The Constitution, which was finally enacted, is called a Congress document by the critics. In the Constituent Assembly, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru moved the objective resolution on 13 December 1947 and passed on 22nd January 1947. What was that? The resolution, yes, mute yourself. The Constituent Assembly declares its forms and solemnly resolved to proclaim India as an independent sovereign republic, number one. Number two, all powers and authorities of the sovereign independent India, its constituent parts and the organs of the governments are derived from the people. All the organs are derived from the people. The third thing, it shall be granted and secured to all the people of India justice, social, economic, and political equality of status and of opportunity before the law, the freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association, and action subject to law and public morality. All these things secured. And the fourth point, there will be the adequate measures to safeguard that will be provided for minorities, backward and tribal area, and depressed and the backward classes. And there will be the territorial integrity of the republic, sovereign rights on the land, sea, and air, be maintained according to justice and the law of civilized nation. This ancient land is to attain its rightful and honorable place in the world and makes its full and willing contribution to the promotion of the world peace and the welfare of mankind. On the basis of this resolution of uh, the preamble of the Constitution was framed, a good number of the members had a legal background. Naturally, they were tempted to borrow different institutions and the constitutional practices from the various sources. And as because of that, you will find a lot of debate and discussions happen to incorporate while incorporating it. The Constituent Assembly of the India has been subject to criticism in promulgating a constitution because of the political and the constitutional anomalies, which means the issues invited by it. So Teddy Roosevelt stated history as a process involved in series of events leaves lessons for the future. We have to learn from the series of events which happened in the history as a lesson for the future. And the past is thus not dead, but in some sense lives in the present. So you cannot leave. The past is not dead. It is living with the present. It influences our present and shapes the future in an important way. We need to take a lesson from the past. The loopholes, why India got colonized. And by taking the lesson from that and keeping the things in the mind, the constitution was drafted. The passionate questions before the inequality is what could be learned from the past. The question comes here, हमने क्या सीखा? What could be learned? As the process, the making of the constitution is a dialogue between the past and the present for a better future. So it's a kind of the dialogue. We want the best for the people of the land and our people. We want to develop and a better future. That's why we are making the constitution, and we made it. The constitution making in the form of the social engineering. It's a kind of social engineering. Often demands management of both the known and the unknown challenges. You might be knowing some of the challenges, and you may not be aware about the upcoming challenges. You are not knowing what will happen in the future. Some of the challenges are the unknown challenges, unforeseen challenges. To deal with that, having some emergency clauses in the constitution, our constitutional makers kept in the mind all those things, especially while deciding what should be left out, what should be kept in. हम किसे बाहर रखें और किसको will keep in that ambit, and what should be built up. In this process, a constitution practically defines and designs new constitution, and it abolishes the old one and promises to live up to expectation in a new way. If a country is highly divided about defining what should be the nature of the new constitution, perhaps against such a background, the Constituent Assembly as a replica of the larger society, it is by looking into the constitution, you can be able to understand the desire of the people of that specific country could not move ahead with a triumphant footstep. Old habits did not die hard in India. So they influenced the course of defining the democracy with prejudices, vested interests, and divided ideologies. So just another 1-2 minutes. So in the last, I would like to say just one thing. The critics points out that there was no constitutional discourse during the making of the constitution. Public consultations were carried out in a limited scale, but those consultations do not deserve to be qualified as the constitutional discourse, the critics say. However, in certain conceptual consensus across the country, such as bringing political ideologies within the country of constitutionalism and ensuring political and policy choices under the authority of the constitution, the supremacy of the Constitution as the means of socio-political partnership or the relationship, the rule of the law as the governance ideal, and the judicial review, whether the new process of the making of the law is in consonance with the Constitution or not, to bring a strategic behaviors in the domain of the constitutional supremacy are minimum preconditions of a successful promulgation of a democratic constitution and building peace. So that were fulfilled in India. So by this way, the lecture on the critical evaluation of the Constituent Assembly is over. And